com on the number one. This is supported talk radio
on the net. So
push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only $5 a month.
If you're new to Shiny Side Out, welcome aboard. This is a tinfoil hat zone, so keep your arms within the vehicle and turn off your personal reality inverters. And please, no flash photography. We're glad you're on board and thank you for inviting us into your lives. So follow, subscribe, or otherwise for the appropriate social media platform. We're halfway through show number 460. 60 and 400. Get yourself some great merchandise from the station's website, an EMP-proof thumb drive with survival documents, or maybe a seed pack of 75,000 seeds to refrigerate for 25 years in your freezer. You can use them whenever you need to, should you need to do that if the S hits the F. But follow the instructions carefully when making your donation/purchase to support the station, because you may live in a country that can't import seeds or knives for that matter, so without them being registered. So anyway, do what you have to do. This is Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecci, and I'm sure Mecci's back in a jiffy.
Right here, buddy.
There he is. So we're talking about the Great Reset, and is this the third? I think it's the third episode.
I think it's the third.
It is too. Yeah. So last week would have been the second. And I'm not sure what page we're on, so I'm going to have Mecci commence.
19, but check the chat. So we shared with you the Great Reset and what is being said about it. We've also shared with you a number of, analyses, articles that from various spectra of the political divide, and they all come up with the same kind of thing, saying, well, this is a very interesting thing, it's not going to go anywhere, it's really run by the corporate elite, etc., so, which is probably true. But that brings us then really to the next point here. So everything so far makes perfect sense, right? We talked about the 9 unknown men, the people behind the curtain, etc., and we can see potential links to, secret organizations, organizations with secrets. If powerful advanced civilizations have existed in the past, it stands to reason that some of their know-how and tech would pose a potentially great threat in the wrong hands. Always assuming that these are real things. Would it therefore not be wiser to conceal some of that ancient science until such a time when humanity was ready for it? Maybe never. Which brings us, of course, now to the next installment here of our show, which is, who are these potential secret rulers of the world? Last week we learned the 9 unknown men, or the 9 unknown men society, might be protecting knowledge, but who rules the world? Now, the following text was extracted from a book that was written in 1936. 1936.
No
in
way.
As much,
that's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, yes, it is. But this is when I read through this, I go, you have to be joking. So this is it's abridged, but you can of course find it for yourselves. Inasmuch as the power of the world's subversive influences, its hidden rulers, consists primarily of their vast, century-old accumulations of gold and silver, and the fact that such metals constitute the basic elements supporting the money structures of all civilized nations, no program could possibly succeed which failed to take this major fact into consideration, or which failed to sponsor the universal adoption of a wholly different and unaccumulative form of currency. It has been the boast of the agents of these hidden rulers that it has seldom been necessary to assassinate any of the world's so-called financial or political leaders, for only infrequently do they find one they cannot either intimidate, flatter, or buy. 1936. However, it occasionally takes a little more money to buy some than others. Therefore, since the gold and silver reserves under the direct control of these hidden world rulers at this date exceed those of even the combined governments of the earth, it should not be difficult to understand, with the financial structure and money exchanges of every nation completely under their influence, why every government on earth is today, directly or indirectly, wholly and entirely controlled by them. Nor to understand why this condition exists, irrespective of the name or nature of the political parties which the public naively vote into office. let me say this again, irrespective of the name or nature of the political parties which the public naively vote into office. Believing that by the use of their vote, they are thereby having some voice in the administration of their country's business and consequently in matters which directly affect their own lives, the world's citizens pay very little attention to what actually takes place in the political affairs of their respective nations, until finally they lose either their lives through war or their financial security and happiness through a subtly planned and expertly executed depression. 1936, this was written. In recognition of the frequently destructive power of misused wealth, all clear-thinking men and women are aware of the fact that the monies of the world must be established on a basis other than gold and silver, before the human race can even hope to break its present shackles and bondage to war and poverty, or to prevent its ultimate and complete enslavement to those whose vast accumulations of these metals enable them to hold mankind in endless bondage. Now, to be clear, right, the elite is one step ahead here already, because it no longer is that our monies are in fact based on gold or silver, right? They're all fiat currencies. So the elite has probably taken this text, which was written almost 90 years ago, and they say, well, this guy is right. Let's do something else here, okay? And the next iteration of that, of course, is the cryptocurrency, everybody, okay? Because then nothing is real anymore. Nothing is at all real. I mean, it's very difficult to ascribe any reality to the currencies in your wallet today. Very difficult, right? Because it isn't. There's no real currency that you carry with you anymore. And it's completely arbitrary. It's completely made up. So I think, unfortunately, they have very much superseded what this author here tried to do and have used it for their own gains. Inasmuch as the age-old curses of illiteracy, ignorance, superstition, autocratic domination, war, and poverty constitute the principal sources of profit for those who have for centuries, and I will say here millennia, governed the affairs of the human race, mankind can expect neither peace nor security until the people whom greed and insane ambition have turned into moral idiots are no longer able to control the governments and resources of the earth through accumulations century after century of its gold and silver, and now of course zeros and ones. Those who are familiar with the manipulations of the international stock exchanges and banking system of the world can readily understand how the possession of vast accumulations of gold and silver would enable the individuals in whose hands they rested to completely dominate and control the lives of men. With the power to increase or decrease the value of stocks, real estate, and the prices of food, clothes, and other human necessities at will, through the mediums of carefully planned revolutions and wars, together with periods of both national and worldwide depressions, a monopoly of the Earth's principal resources in a direct but well-hidden control of the financial policies and therefore the governments of the world's major nations have been maintained century after century. Mankind will have little or no opportunity to resist this domination as long as gold and silver are enthroned as the world's basis of currency and as the gods which it worships. Now we need to, in this text, replace gold and silver with just money, essentially, right? That's all it is. Because gold and silver is right out the window, Dave.
Yeah, completely. The human race, without realizing it, expends literally its entire efforts and the fruitage of its talents, inventions and progressive developments merely adding to the wealth and stranglehold over the human life already possessed by those who control the monies and the mediums of exchange required by men in their businesses or their business transactions with one another. For centuries, men have worked not for themselves and their families, but for the world's money changers. It's hidden, though, actual rulers. The human race, without realizing it, well, that's the same sentence. Yeah. When carefully analyzed, it is found that for centuries, over 97 out of every 100 families in the world have expended their entire talents and energies without having received even the barest necessities of a well-rounded life in payment for their efforts. Although men have continuously been made to feel that the private profit system, evolved by the money changers, provides everyone with an equal opportunity for compensation and advancement in proportion to his or her respective talents. Nevertheless, Well-planned and expertly executed wars and depressions have always stolen these rewards from them. The cunningly planned plots and slavery of the private profit system become self-evident when we realize that the world's money changes through the avenues of revolutions, wars, and periodical depressions get back most of the money they pay out in salaries or business profits to others. They readily retrieve such expenditures through the profits of revolutions, wars, carefully planned unemployment, depressions, continuous and ever-increasing taxation, royalties from the control of major patents, the manipulation of industries and stocks, wheat and food exchanges, together with almost religiously encouraged money savings of the world's thrifty population deposited for so-called safekeeping in the money changers' centrally controlled international system of banks and so-called trust companies. Their method is really quite simple. Since all they require to ensure their success is an attitude of indifference on the part of the public, and this mankind themselves generously provide. Revolutions and wars, together with worldwide poverty and its endless cycles of depressions and unemployment, comprise the broadest channels through which the hidden rulers' constantly growing accumulation of gold, silver and jewellery flow into their treasuries. When people are out of work and hungry, they will sell not only their old gold, silverware and jewellery, but also their services for little or nothing, in order that they might thereby obtain food. To bring about such conditions of dire need, it is only necessary for the money changers to cause what the world calls a depression. Mecci. Who's quite possibly muted.
Who's quite possibly muted. Being in complete control of the international money and credit structure, they only need to shut off the flow of credit to the businessmen, farmers, and other employers of human labor. Shut down the major industries of the world, most of which they either partly or entirely control. Start calling the thousands of loans made through, well, millions really, through their banks and other credit avenues. Manipulate the stock and bond exchanges in such a manner that thousands of banks fail and are forced to close their doors. And the money changers, with but slight inconvenience thereafter, quickly gather up the previous few years of so-called prosperity savings accumulated by millions of thrifty people all over the world. It's the redistribution of wealth that we have seen in the great financial crisis. And we see it. It's an ongoing thing. It's not stopping. It's ongoing, right? With no thought even spared to the eventual repayment of any of the taxpayers' monies to these, well, corporate entities. It is not long by the application of such methods before they have retrieved whatever surplus funds the industrious workers, farmers, and businessmen have gradually accumulated from their seemingly generous salaries or business profits. I just want to say something to this very quickly, Dave. Personal experience. My family was quite well-to-do after World War One, even before World War One, right? World War One didn't touch us too much. That was okay, I guess. I'm talking about my European branch of the family. And well-to-do, owning hotels, having land, etc., etc. Then World War Two comes, and they lost everything. Like my grandmother literally was fleeing west with I think an infant, a couple of toddlers, and 2 teenagers, and a bicycle, right, leaving everything else behind. So I have very close personal experience of this redistribution of wealth through the mechanism of war, and I know that many of our listeners would have a very close experience of the redistribution of wealth through a depression or other economic measures, such as, like the world economic crisis we experienced some years ago, which truly saw billions, if not trillions, move from the pockets of the Joe average to Mr. I live in Bond Street and own yachts and chalets in Switzerland. Astounding. And then these money people gave themselves massive bonuses with the government bailout money. I mean, where's the oversight? Where's nothing? It is astounding. Now, those whose savings are not taken through bank failures and other occurrences of a similar nature are forced, by means of unemployment, to gradually use up the surplus funds. We see this, right? If you're under duress or you experience hardship, the governments of the world, they will means test you. Oh, you better use up all your money first before we help you. So once you've used up all your money, then we will help you, because then you're completely dependent upon us.
That's right.
We see this everywhere. It's policy. It's government policy. When enough people have been thrown out of work and are no longer able to buy the output of those of the world's factories, which may still be continuing to operate, nor to purchase the produce of the farms, then these agricultural and industrial institutions are likewise forced to cease hiring men and women. Soon their surplus stocks are disposed of at whatever they can get for them, in what has become, through lack of buyers, a rapidly declining market. And they're also left entirely at the mercy of the world's money changers. As soon as it is known that practically all surplus funds have been exhausted, then any loans or mortgages against these people or businesses are called in for payment. Knowing that such people have no funds with which to pay off their loans, the farms and businesses belonging to them are then taken over by these money changers through their satellites and agents, to be disposed of in accordance with their program for retrieving any accumulation of jewelry, gold or silver gathered by the world's population during the previous generation, and of gaining control of the new inventions, discoveries, patents, resources or properties which may be of benefit to them in the exercise of the continued domination over the affairs of men. Sadly, that's exactly what the world is like. That paragraph has described what has been happening over the last few hundred years, and longer potentially, but certainly over the last few hundred years. Because the people in power are hardly ever the ones that lose everything. I'm talking about true power, behind the veil, the unseen elite, etc., etc. I know it's vague, but that's the best we can do, because we don't really know who they are. If you're thinking Rothschild, etc., think again. They're the front people. They're the people that you see. The actual people you don't see, right? The actual people you don't see. When the businesses, professional, industrial, agricultural, and employee groups have, through the process of a long drawn-out depression, been forced to use up whatever form of savings they may have not already lost through bank failures or some other premeditated form of robbery, they are next obliged to draw upon their emergency reserves of stocks and bonds, which they have gradually accumulated through their industrious efforts, frugality, and self-denial. Since by that time few but the very rich have any money left with which to buy even the necessities of life, to say nothing of such luxuries as stocks and bonds, there is consequently but very little market for these securities, which have been so carefully put away for the rainy day. Inasmuch as there are only a few buyers and therefore little demand, it is not long before the holders of these securities offer them at a reduced price to anyone who will buy. The day soon arrives when those who formerly were not wise enough to sell are obliged to reduce the prices still further, until stocks and bonds, which they purchased at a unit price, let's say $10, from the money changers through the satellites, the international system of stock exchanges, banks, and so-called trust companies, they are very happy to sell them back at a unit price of $5. However, waiting that time, it is not long before the money changers through their worldwide agencies are able to buy back these securities at not only as low as $5, $3, or $1 per unit, but almost in exchange for a loaf of bread. If people by that time have become hungry enough to make such sacrifices of their resources, men who have lost their homes and have no money with which to buy food will gladly consent to the passing of local, state, or national measures, granting their respective governments the right to issue millions or even billions of dollars in bonds with which to provide food, clothes, and homes for those who have been deprived of such necessities. Knowing these facts, the money changers soon find they are quite able, as a result of their carefully planned depression, to further strengthen their hold upon the governments and industries controlling the lives of such people. In fact, since there are by that time none who are able to underwrite such bonds and thereby provide the money with which to feed the unemployed, other than the financial institutions controlled by these subversive influences, they not only succeed in stealing the most desirable homes, businesses, farms, and properties of the people of an entire nation, and are enabled to buy back stocks or bonds for a few pennies, which they formerly sold for many dollars per unit, but they also receive as a reward of their careful plans and financial manipulations a mortgage upon the resources.
That's right.
And that was taken from Mankind United by Arthur Bell in 1936, pages 28 to 37. Have a look for yourself. Have a read. It was written in 1936. This very clearly describes what has happened for the last few days. For the past few decades.
Yeah, yes. It's still going on. Mecci, the thing that you can see the influence of this book was the Great Depression.
Absolutely.
And living through it, because that's the most recent one for that book. I
Yes.
know we've had some recessions, but right now all of the government help is about to expire on the current virus relief, and unless we see a huge uptick in it, it's just going to peter away to nothing. And the people who are still unemployed may still be unemployed, and we're looking to see some the opportunity for those who have enough money to be able to buy some property, because we're going to see some bankruptcy sales coming up in the next, between here and April.
Oh, completely.
Because that's just the nature of the beast, right? We'll see the same thing. This, for us, is our 1918, not the 21, but the 1918. So I think we're in some very treacherous waters here, and however it pans out, I think is going to be the fate of, for us, Scotty from marketing, and Joe Biden for that matter in the US. So it's a big thing. This is huge. We should be taking this into account and understanding what these words mean, and from a great reset perspective, circling back, it's the agenda. It's what's happening. They let it go up, they sell, then it all crashes, they buy in at low, and then they make even more money from it. If you've got enough money to influence it, you can do that.
100%. 100%. It is. It's the long con. It's the longest con the human race has been exposed to ever. Mm-hmm. We are, and most of us aren't even aware. For us, it's just life, Dave. It's just life. I think I mentioned this before, but my most favorite example of our life here is, and I don't know where you all live, listeners out there in the world, but unless you're Amish or Mennonites, you probably have to go through a whole bunch of regulations and permissions and contracts, etc., to buy or build a house. What the Amish do, they just get together and build a house. Right. But we've come to accept to pay stamp duty, or taxes on this, and buy the land and get permission to. Then we can't build what we want. No. We got to comply with whatever is designated for that council area. Or
and
whatever,
it's not just adhering to the Australian design rules. No, it's you might even have a covenant that says you can't use recycled materials.
Absolutely.
That your fence can't go to the street; it can only stay beside the house.
It's complete insanity. I mean, it's your property, but it isn't. So we've come to accept it, though. This is really my point. I don't care if it's right or wrong, whatever. We've come to accept that this is life. We've come to accept that. This is just how it is. Well, no, it isn't. We've just allowed it to be this way. We've allowed it to happen this way. Do we need building standards? Yeah, absolutely, we need building standards. We have to build buildings that don't fall down. Mm-hmm. Do we need to pay all these taxes and duties on it? No. We are taxed so heavily in the world, and I don't really care which, except maybe for Dubai or Singapore, but everybody else in the world pays so much in taxes, direct and indirect taxes, that you spend 70 to 80% of your time working for the government. We're all government employees, all of us. Mm-hmm. The government was conceived in its purest form. Let's be idealistic for a second here, Dave. The government was conceived as a body that would look after the people of a nation or a village or whatever, whatever government it might be, to look after its best interests. That has gone out the window a long time ago. There's nobody at all interested in any of that. Yeah, I saw that. Dave, do you want to mention it very quickly?
No, not yet. Not until I can confirm it.
No, cool. Absolutely. But look, let's go and look at the shadow forces behind the behind these agendas. Now, when we wrote this first was the New World Order. Now it's the Great Reset. Somewhere, actually, no, this is your component, Dave.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, sure.
Yep.
No dramas at all. Somewhere near the very top of the pyramid, an extremely elitist organization known as the Council of the 13 Families orchestrates all of the major world events. As the name suggests, the council consists of the top 13 most influential families on Earth. An increasing number of people are becoming aware that 99% of the Earth's population is controlled by an elite of around about 1%. But the Council of 13 Families consists of less than 1% of the 1% of the elite, and nobody on Earth can apply for membership. In their opinion, they are entitled to rule over the rest of us because they are the direct descendants of the ancient gods and consider themselves royal. These families are Rothschilds, the Bruces, Cavendish, de Medici, Hanover, Habsburg, Krupp, Plantagenet?
Plantagenet.
There you go. Rockefeller, Romanov, Sinclair or St. Clair, Warburg, Del Banco, the Windsors, if you know who they are, Saxe-Coburg, Goth, and Russian heritage too, by the way. German, is it German, Mecci, or Russian? German. There, I knew I'd get.
But since you brought it up, in World War One, the Tsar of Russia, the King of England, and the Kaiser of Germany, they're all first cousins.
The Kaiser had all the white onions. The Rothschild dynasty is unquestionably the most powerful, visible bloodline on Earth, and their estimated wealth is around 500 trillion. They exercise their power through the world banking empire, which is almost entirely owned by them. The most important institutions that work hard to establish the New World Order and completely enslave our species are, let's take these ones in turn, Mecci.
Sure.
The City of London, finance controlled by the Rothschilds, not part of the UK.
The US Federal Reserve, finance private bank owned by the Rothschilds, not part of the USA.
The Vatican City, which is currently in a blackout. Indoctrination, deception and scare tactics, not part of Italy.
Washington, D.C., military, mind programming, brainwashing and depopulation, not part of the USA.
That's very interesting. All of the above institutions function as individual states, operating under their own laws. Hence, there is no court of law on Earth that could ever prosecute them. They're in safe zones, their own created safe zones. The multitude of secret societies in existence today operate as branches of a mega corporation, which is owned by the Council of the 13 Families. Even though they have been handsomely rewarded for their work, the members of these secret societies are not members of the elite bloodlines. They don't know who their masters are, and they have no idea what the real agenda is. Mecci.
The brainwashing. Another mass enslavement tool that they're using against us is the so-called educational system. Schools are no longer what they used to be, and children are learning to memorize without thinking and obey without questioning. In fact, this established educational system is extremely expensive to keep operational and obsolete in the age of the internet. Why obsolete, you may ask? Because the internet gives us free access to almost infinite amounts of information. So why are we still paying huge amounts of money for governmental education? Because the world's elite require that our children learn conformity and inside-the-box thinking. Couldn't agree more. Currency slaves. The financial system has stealthy stealthily enslaved our species, and now we are being used as currency slaves. I like to think of this as the working slaves or the working poor. We work from 9 to 5 every day, and well, or more, in boring and depressing environments, not stimulated by anything creative or constructive. In most cases, the sole motivation for going to work is the next paycheck. And no matter how hard we work, we never seem to have enough money. Have you ever wondered why megacorporations reaping billions of dollars per year in profits pay dozens of millions to the CEOs and as close as possible to the minimum wage to the rest of the employees? This has been carefully designed because a person that is constantly on the edge will never have time for self-education, introspection, and eventually spiritual awakening. Isn't this our main purpose on Earth? To become spiritual beings and be spiritual? Obviously, not religious, but spiritual. And complete the incarnation cycle. They don't need educated people who are capable of critical thinking and have spiritual goals. No. This kind of people are dangerous to the establishment. They want obedient robots, just intelligent enough to operate the machines and keep the system running, but stupid enough never to ask questions, Dave.
You know what? That's the phrase that was my take-home phrase from that show. And I completely agree with it. Because they've announced that, Mecci too, in Australia, that very phrase. But they've worded it. What we need is our school system is going to provide people that can do office jobs. That's it. No free thinking. No. The free thinking alarm has gone off, Mecci.
Bad thinking.
I like when they blink in unison. Money. That's my third Simpsons quote already. Money is the eye of the devil. All of the world's biggest problems have their roots deeply embedded in a financial plague. Wars are profitable. Diseases are profitable. Earth's plundering is profitable. Human slavery and inhumane working conditions are also profitable. Our leaders have been corrupted by money, and mankind's collective mission on Earth has been hijacked by money. So why do we need the financial system at all in the first place? Actually, we don't need it. At least, not anymore. The planet doesn't charge us a cent for using its natural resources, and we have the technology to extract them with physically working a day. Without physically working a day. We have automated machines that can do this. So the solution. More to the point, there are brilliant minds out there discussing the concept of a resource-based economy for decades. One example is Mr. Jacques Fresco, a brilliant industrial designer and social engineer who's spent most of his life designing the future. The cities proposed by Mr. Jacques Fresco, that's a terrible accent, will be built by autonomous construction robots and will be eco-friendly and self-sustainable, earthquake and fireproof. Mecci, I even saw a 3D printed building. Houses 3D printed by using cement. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, I know. It's a thing, and it only takes a couple of days or so to actually build it.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I don't mind those little lines like a 3D printer, because I've just bought a 3D printer. I can dream bigger. Other people are already discussing the transition plan towards the economy of the future, where money is no longer required and all individuals will be offered the best conditions to reach their highest potentials, all for the benefit of our species as a whole.
Star Trek.
I know, right? The Star Trek universe. And as long as I can, have a relationship, and the corporation hooks me up with 7 of 9. That's all I want. So I don't ask for much. But look, when the corporation assigns you a partner, we know we're there. That to me is that's the awareness day when it all comes true. So my question is, or shiny side out question is, are we ready to embrace the future and escape the control of the elite in a world without money, or are we going to allow the New World Order to happen?
See, and this is from Humans Are Free, the webpage, humansarefree.com. This is where it all becomes very gray, Dave. Right? Do we want a money-free society? Ideally, yes. The answer is yes. Money is no good because money allows parasites to exist and accumulate wealth without actually doing anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you actually have to work for a living, if you have to contribute, let's forget work for a second. If you have to contribute, right, that's a whole different ballgame. So I'm for no money, right? I'm absolutely for it. Do I want no money in the hands of the elite? No. I think that's a terrible idea.
But do I want to have to give up all my possessions to live in a world with no money?
But you don't have to. They're yours. They're your possessions, right? That's the whole point of it. These are whatever you've accumulated in your life. That's yours. It's yours. You worked hard for it. That's great. But I would love to live in a society where everybody would have to contribute meaningfully, right? To the best of their ability, right? And in a post-scarcity society, where we have large amounts of robotization, automation, etc., where we don't have to fight for the basic necessity of life anymore. So everybody gets. So let me put it this way: it's not communism, right? It is not communism. Think of more of Star Trek, if you will. Everybody has food. Everybody has got somewhere safe to live. Everybody gets good education, right? Proper education. Everybody has got access to healthcare, right? All of those things. Everybody is allowed to travel, etc., etc. So you've got. So the necessities and even some of the luxuries of life are taken care of. After that, it's up to you. You want to do more? Go ahead, do more, right? But ultimately, we no longer work for money or stuff. We might actually get enjoyment for contributing and inventing new things, or maybe you like to cook. I like to cook, right? And if I had a choice, I probably would want to do that. I like to cook large meals for large groups of people. And if I could do this every day of my life, I think I'd be quite happy to do that, right? Because there's a great satisfaction in people in watching people see you eat your food, or other people like me. Maybe you're an artist, or maybe you like to perform. And there's great satisfaction in seeing people enjoy that, or maybe you like to write a book, or whatever, right? Or whatever your thing is, whatever your stick is, or maybe you like to race cars virtually. And there's great satisfaction in having people admire. I know exactly, right? But there's great satisfaction in having people admire your skills in that. Whatever your skills are, whatever your interests in life are, and we all have them. When you were a child, you didn't grow up thinking, "Oh, I wish I can work in an office one day," or I really want to work for this, minimum wage job, hopefully 3 of them. So this is not
work my fingers to the bone and get almost nothing enough to eat. Yeah.
I don't think that was anybody's life's plan. But no, I want to be able to finish this today, and I think we can, Dave. We got 20 minutes. I think we can. But this is really important. This is the most important piece of information we have shared with you in a long, long time. The last time we shared this was 6-7 years ago, and this was written in 2013. Now it's all just crazy conspiracy, not job wacko talk, right? Isn't it? What? No substance to any of it. Shut up, Dave. Shut up.
Shut up, defense.
Shut up.
Shut up.
Well, there's this article. Which you're welcome to dismiss at your own peril. And this article was first published on September 30th, 2013. So a mere 8 years, 7 years really ago, right? So Karen Hughes is a graduate of Yale Law School, and she worked in the legal department of the World Bank for more than 20 years. Karen Hughes. In fact, when she was fired for blowing the whistle on corruption inside the World Bank, she held the position of senior counsel. She was in a unique position to see exactly how the global elite rules the world, and the information that she is now revealing to the public is absolutely stunning. According to Hughes, the elite uses a very tight core of financial institutions and mega corporations to dominate the planet. The goal is control. They want all of us enslaved to debt. They want all of our governments enslaved to debt, and they want all of our politicians addicted to the huge financial contributions that they funnel into their campaigns. Since the elite also own all of the big media companies, the mainstream media never lets us in on the secret that there is something fundamentally wrong with the way that our system works. Remember, this is not some conspiracy theorist that is saying these things. This is a Yale-educated attorney that worked inside the World Bank for more than 2 decades. The following summary of her credentials comes directly from her website. I'm going to share this with you here. Karen Hughes studied law at Yale Law School and economics at the University of Amsterdam. She worked in the U.S. Export-Import Bank of the U.S. from 1980 to 1985 and in the legal department of the World Bank from 1986 to 2007. She established the Non-Governmental Organization Committee of the International Law Section of the American Bar Association and the Committee on Multilateralism and the Accountability of International Organizations of the American branch of the International Law Association. Today, Hughes is trying very hard to expose the corrupt financial system that the global elite are using to control the wealth of the world. During an interview with the New American, she discussed how we are willingly allowing this group of elitists to totally dominate the resources of the planet. A former insider at the World Bank, ex-senior counsel Karen Hughes, says the global financial system is dominated by a small group of corrupt, power-hungry figures centered around the privately owned U.S. Federal Reserve. Privately owned U.S. Federal Reserve. The network has seized control of the media to cover up its crimes, too, she explained. In an interview with the New American, Hughes said that when she tried to blow the whistle on multiple problems at the World Bank, she was fired for her efforts. Now, along with a network of fellow whistleblowers, Hughes is determined to expose and end the corruption, and she is confident of success. Citing an explosive 2011 Swiss study published in the PLOS, one journal, on the network of global corporate control, Hughes pointed out that a small group of entities, mostly financial institutions and especially central banks, exert a massive amount of influence over the international economy from behind the scenes. What is really going on is that the world's resources are being dominated by this group, she explained, adding that the corrupt power grabbers have managed to dominate the media as well. They're being allowed to do it. It was conducted by a team of researchers at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, Switzerland. They studied the relationships between 37 million companies and investors worldwide. And what they discovered is that there is a super entity of just 147 very tightly knit mega corporations that controls 40% of the entire global economy. When the team further untangled the web of ownership, it found much of it tracked back to a super entity of 100. I just got that. In effect, less than 1% of the companies were able to control 40% of the entire network, says Gladfelder. Most were financial institutions. The top 20 included Barclays Bank, JP Morgan Chase and Company, and the Goldman Sachs Group. But the global elite don't just control these mega corporations. According to Hughes, they also dominate the unelected, unaccountable organizations that control the finances of virtually every nation on the face of the planet. The World Bank, the IMF, and central banks such as the Federal Reserve literally control the creation and the flow of money worldwide. Dave?
The apex of this system is the Bank of International Settlements. It is the central bank of central banks. And posted below, well, in this article, there was a video where you can watch Hughes tell Greg Hunter of USAWatchdog.com the following: "We don't have to wait for anybody to fire the Fed or Bank for International Settlements. Some states have already started to recognize silver and gold, the precious metals, as currency. Most people have never heard, or never even heard, of the Bank of International Settlements. But it is an extremely important organization. In a previous article, the writer describes how the central bank of the world is literally immune to the laws of all national governments. An immensely powerful international organization that most people have never heard of secretly controls the money supply of the entire globe. It is called the Bank of International Settlements, and it is the central bank of central banks. It's located in Basel, Switzerland,
Yeah.
but it also has branches in Hong Kong and Mexico City. It is essentially an unelected, unaccountable central bank of the world that has complete immunity from taxation and from national laws. Even Wikipedia admits that it is not accountable to a single national government. The Bank for International Settlements was used to launder money for the Nazis during World War II. But these days, the main purpose of the BIS is to guide and direct the centrally planned global financial system. Today, 58 global central banks belong to the BIS, and it has far more power over how the US economy, or any other economy for that matter, will perform over the course of the next year than any politician does. Every 2 months, these central bankers of the world gather in Basel for another global economy meeting. During those meetings, decisions are made which affect every man, woman and child on the planet, and yet none of us have any say in what goes on. The Bank for International Settlements is an organization that is founded on the global elite, by the global elite, and it operates for the benefit of the global elite. Surprise, surprise. Well, no surprises there. And it is intended to be one of the key cornerstones of the emerging world economic system, and for that matter, the Great Reset. This system did not come into being by accident. In fact, the global elite have been developing the system for a very long time. In a previous article entitled "Who Runs the World? Solid Proof that a Core Group of Wealthy Elitists is Pulling the Strings," what a great subtitle, the writer included a quote from the Georgetown University history professor Carol Quigley from a book that he authored all the way back in 1966, in which he discussed the big plans that the elite had for the Bank of International Settlements. Mecci.
The powers of financial capitalism had another far-reaching aim. Nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. This system was to be controlled in a feudalist fashion by the central banks of the world acting in concert, by secret agreements arrived at in frequent private meetings and conferences. The apex of the system was to be the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, a private bank owned and controlled by the world's central banks, which were themselves private corporations. And that is exactly what we have today. We have a system of neo-feudalism in which all of us in our national governments are enslaved to debt. This system is governed by the central banks and by the Bank for International Settlements, and it systematically transfers the wealth of the world out of our hands and into the hands of the global elite. But most people have no idea that any of this is happening, because the global elite also control what we see, hear, and think about. Today there are just 6 giant media corporations that control more than 90% of the news and entertainment that you watch on your television in the United States, and we can extend that certainly to most of the global nations. But just let's go back to this paragraph here. We have a system of neo-feudalism in which all of us and our national governments are enslaved to debt. This system is governed by the central banks and by the Bank for International Settlement, and it systematically transfers the wealth of the world out of our hands and into the hands of the global elite. That's exactly, almost word for word, what was written in the book that we shared with you from 1936. Okay, this is here. This is from the book 1936. The cunningly planned plots and slavery of the private profit system become self-evident when we realize that the world's money changers, through the avenues of revolutions, wars, and political depressions, get back most of the money they pay out in salaries or business profits to others. They readily retrieve such expenditures through the profits of revolutions, wars, carefully planned unemployment, depressions, continuous and ever-increasing taxation, royalties from the control of major patents, etc., etc., etc. Their method is really quite simple, and since all are required to assure their success is an attitude of indifference on the part of the public. And this mankind themselves generously provide, even more so now, because of, well, Karen Hughes is right. We watch the news, but it's not news. There's nothing newsworthy in it. You know, the mainstream media will show us what we're meant to see. Mm-hmm. We're all sitting in the cave, looking at the cave wall, at the shadows. Say, oh, look, there's life. And anybody who wants to tell us otherwise, we happily beat to death. So where does that leave us? What do we do, everybody? In the chat room as well. Stardust Man, yes, I think it's possible. Right? To your question, you know, do you think this could happen? Yeah. Yes. Yes. So look, I don't know, Dave, where this leaves us. This is endgame almost, right? We have entered endgame.
So this same group of elites, yeah, and the Davos group and the WEF and the social media platforms and everyone else that's part of a member of the WEF, because they have power and influence, have agreed on a stakeholder. I just want to make this point: the stakeholder economy, not an individual economy, not a big business economy, not a national economy respective in every country, but a global economy based on the wants of the stakeholders, and the stakeholders themselves wrote the plan. It's those members, it's the same people, their plan, their rules, and it was brought to us through the World Economic Forum, and they told us what they're going to do. They told us. They've set the plan out. This is this is like, if this was a waypoint, Mecci, in a flight path, yeah, this is where we're at. We've just changed course just a little, but we're heading exactly where they've now created our future for us, and we're on this thing going there. That is what is happening. We're passengers to their desire to create a brand new world.
100%. And most of us completely superfluous to their wish of existence. It's a sad state of affairs, but that's exactly where we are, Dave. I suggest everybody becomes aware and acts responsibly in their own interest. Right? Do you trust? No. You can vote. You can still vote with your money. Don't consume the corporate news. Don't consume the corporate food. Right? Educate your children. I mean, they have to go to school. They'll send you to prison if you take.
Yeah, that's right.
School.
Well, where we live here.
But you can educate your children at home. Make your children think. Make them think. All right? They don't want that. I know they don't want that, but it's necessary. Right? Be a change agent in your children's lives. Don't leave it up to the state. Don't leave it up to the government to educate them. They will be completely brainwashed. Your kids.
Would you want your children to be brainwashed? Not you, Mecci, but the listener, because I know your thoughts and mine. I implore my kids to not listen to a single word, but rather the whole story, and find a duplicate story from another slant, and understand where that Venn diagram crosses over in the middle, where the truth is, the actual part of the story, and it deletes the other information by understanding the true nature of things. Question everything. It can get a little annoying. We're going to go out.
Well,
why? I need to get in the car. How come? Well, put some shoes on. Why do I have to wear shoes? Yeah, but look, I have to appreciate what I've done.
No, but that's not a bad thing, right? And look, children will grow out of that when they develop, critical thinking faculties.
Well, I prefer that they did that than saying, "Yes, Father."
Thank you for letting me keep my little piece of brain in this jar. That's so nice, Father. Yeah, look, it is a very disturbing. It's a very concerning development that we've been seeing here, that has been unfolding in front of us. It is not of our making, but it certainly is of our acquiescence. We have allowed it to happen.
Oh, look, there's the music. It's the end of show 460. Jerbear's After Hours is coming up next. As you can see him in the chat room there. Have a great show, Jerbear, as he always does. And look, stay safe and be discerning. That's my best advice. We'll see you next week for another show Inside Out with Dave and Mecci. Take care, everyone.